Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Big shout out to Liam, who's the head of design and narrative at Phantom Galaxies. We really appreciate you joining us, especially considering you're on holiday in America right now.
Thank you very much. Yeah, happy to be here. And do be warned if there are any background noises, especially of children. This is because I'm on holiday, not because we let kids run rampant around the Blowfish Studios office.
We do have, standards at the office. And say hello, Glam. It's good to see you here as well.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited for this. This is something that I know the community has been asking for. And so happy we could bring this to you. And what better way to start than with BFS Liam? I'm peaking right now. Over to you, Barker.
For sure. So we've collected all of your questions from the Typeform where you all submitted it, the queues, and we've basically made a AMA format with a whole bunch of questions, and we're just going to start with a list. So we've got an easy one that was submitted by our community, first off. So Liam, which is your favorite starfighter and where is your favorite spot in the game?
So I think both of my two answers for this question both come from patrols at the moment, because that's what me and the team are spending a lot of our time playtesting, playing with the community, and also building what's going to come next for patrols. So currently the hugely overpowered breacher missile means that I'm a huge fan of the breacher currently, and its ability to wipe waves out in the current live patrols. So I'm enjoying that before it inevitably gets hit with the I wouldn't say the nerf hammer, a small tool of nerf of some kind to bring it in line with some of the others. And while I do really like the patrol space that we've got live in the game currently, I'm really looking forward to sharing the new environments that we're working on that are going to be a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter, a little bit more constrained. Really excited for that, and this is going to relate to some of the questions about weapon range that we'll be talking about today as well.
For sure, yeah. It's really cool to hear that we're going to be looking into the insights of patrols. It should be a lot of fun. All right. I personally love the patrols maps as well. The crystals coming out of the asteroids is so sick. They're really great. All right. So the second question is, what was the most difficult part of designing/developing patrols?
I think certainly the people with the hardest work that they've absolutely knocked it out of the park is the dev side on the technical back end of pulling player groups together, the matchmaking and server side of things. I think if we look at patrols as across the board, that's was a massive undertaking for us, and we will, things will continue to improve, but we're certainly pleased with how it's rolled out so far. For the design side of things specifically, I think it does come back to the level and the environment being one of the most challenging elements. I think we really want shooting in the game to feel as impactful and as visceral as we can. Like, we want it to feel, we're going to find all these cool weapons, or buy them or earn them from content in the future. We want them to feel great, and a lot of that relates to the spatial relationships between player characters and enemies, and the environment that gives you the chance for that gameplay to play out, and for those weapons to feel as good as they can. And I think that's why we're kind of looking at all different types of environments that are different to what we've got in the game currently, for future patrols, to really test out different types of environments, and continue to find the best types of venues that bring Phantom Galaxy style combat to life, because exciting thing about Phantom Galaxies and the sometimes challenging thing about it is that there aren't that many games that do the types of things that we're aiming to do. There are lots of space sims or space action games on a whole spectrum from the kind of arcadey up to the heavy simulation things, and there are mech games, but there's no one that sits in the kind of middle spot of where we want to be, of being actiony, being a mech game, but also being being a space combat game as well. It's really exciting to be searching for what's going to be good there, but it's also a challenging process because we don't have as many tried and trusted examples of knowing what will work, and we have to do a lot of experimentation. And I think over the next weeks and months, in the future updates, you're going to see a lot of that experimentation that we've been doing kind of bear fruit, as it were.
For sure, it's very exciting to see the designing spreadsheets and stuff that I've been able to see in the background, and also the amount of networking and code that was put into this game mode. It gives me so much respect for the developing team because I just have no idea how they do it. 15,000 lines of code or something. I saw it's nuts. So lots of respect to all the team who've been developing things and designing it. It is difficult when you don't have the reference point as well to make these kind of games.
And I should say on that front, we've not only been building, the infrastructure required to do kind of the random matchmaking that we have now, but we obviously want to build. We are going to build towards you being able to manage your own player groups as well, and that is all infrastructure that we're building from scratch. So at the moment, you can only jump in with yourself and get randomly match made with up to 3 other people. But in the future, we want you to be able to go in with a party of 4 of your own creation, or you and one person, and then we get 2 randoms and drop them in with you as well, and any combination therein. Inviting your friends to your group, etc., all things that we'll be adding over time. So it's not just the behavior and features and tech that you can see currently. It's also the infrastructure that's going to allow us to add to that and build more in the future.
For sure, making sure that we have a foundation to build off is such a big thing. All right. So the next question is, how often do you plan to release new patrols for the community?
So we are definitely looking. So we started with the first patrol as a explicitly a one patrol put out to the community to really test, like I said, this infrastructure that we've been working on, to put all the player base into one pot, as it were, and give the infrastructure a thorough testing that we're just simply not able to do internally. We're super lucky to have a dedicated community who are playing the game, and it's super valuable to be able to release something and have a community there that's going to help us find where the issues are, because there are always some, and we're not always able to find them all ourselves. So yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to anyone who's jumped in, and if they've done one patrols or they've been logging on every day to collect a little bit of extra. Thank you very much for doing that. Some of those problems we find are really obvious, right? Like someone's game crashes, or someone's host session dies. That's and that feedback gets through to through the help desk and to QA, and then it becomes a ticket for a developer to investigate. But there's also a bunch of stuff that we can see on the back end about how many servers are being spun up, how many sessions are completing successfully or not. So even if you just play a patrol, have your 5 to 15 minutes of fun, depending on how quickly you get through, and get your reward and get out, you might not necessarily feel like you've done anything hugely valuable for the game, but it's another really valuable data point of people completing these things successfully, and any information that we're getting from the back end. Having said that, there is clearly more elaborate and more fully featured things we want to bring in the future. The current patrol we have is not our target. Our target endpoint for what we want patrols to be like. This is the start of a long process of building out more interesting gameplay scenarios. So you will definitely see more patrols in the next update, and then over time we'll be looking to build the systems in place to allow us to update what patrols are available to you much more frequently. So, for example, the bounties, they rotate almost every day, and we'll look to be building, a system that's allows us to do something similar-ish for patrols, and what patrols are eventually going to evolve into, in a bunch of different directions. But yeah, for the next update, you'll like to see, a few more patrols. We're still, working on those at the moment, and we don't know exactly how many of them are going to make the cut for the next update, but we're building all the content we want to build to be reusable, and building a buffet of rotating content that we can then continue to make more interesting with other features like randomized enemy spawning, different types of modifiers that are going to be applied, different difficulty ranges, all of this type of stuff. So you're going to have new explicit content in terms of the environment that you go to, enemies in different sizes of waves, different layouts, but then also more features that will take that same content and keep it providing fresh challenges, regardless of whether you're level 1 just starting out, or level 55 at the current cap. I think that about covers the plans.
Sweet. Okay. So currently, because XP only goes to the person that gets the kill, it feels as though Patrols is more competitive rather than collaborative. Will the XP reward system change?
Yes, 100%. So this is something that you'll see change in an update in the near future. I'm not at this stage, especially given that I'm currently on holiday, I'm less in sync with the rest of the team. But I would say in the next either in the next update or very soon afterwards, you'll see a change. So basically, both any player who does damage to an enemy will get kill credit, like you would see in most kind of PvE games. So if you've got a bounty to kill Norans and you're doing your patrol, and you get 90% damage dealt to one of the pirates, and then someone else comes in and gets that last 10%, you'll both get the kill credit. There will be some checks and balances on that to avoid players kind of spraying a large area of enemies and just kind of not doing anything for the rest of the patrol. But there's we've got a number of ways to easily control any kind of exploitation and AFKing there. But yes, certainly, definitely very high on our fix list to make it feel as much. It's a PvE experience, and that should be the goal. Every player should feel like they're helping each other rather than having to compete with each other for kills.
For sure, more of a team-based effort than a single solo experience.
Yeah.
Sweet. So what can we expect to see in Patrols in the future?
I realise I did kind of hint and talk about a few things a little bit already, but I guess specifically for things you might be seeing in the future, in the next update. We've got things like control points happening in the game. So rather than just being purely a wave-based encounter as patrols currently are, we can look to move the player around the environment to capture control points, while they still probably have some waves of enemies in there, but you're going to potentially have to split up who's on ad clear versus who's on control point capturing. We'll be experimenting with some time limits as well, and I'm imagining we might see some turret emplacements in the near future. Now the list goes on, beyond that, but those are things that I think we're likely to see in the near future. And then some of the things I already talked about, more systemic changes that aren't necessarily new things that you'll encounter in a patrol, but just things that change the way that you experience patrols, like so modifiers, difficulty settings, those types of things.
For sure. I feel like the control points will be so cool because it will really change the way people. It will almost give people roles with their mech choice, right? So maybe the Lancers end up doing that so they can shoot the far away enemies while on the control point. Like, there's so many different things to think about with that kind of addition into the patrols.
Yeah, then we've got a long list of elements that we want to bring into patrols. So we just look to find the ones that we think are going to either bring us the most value to the player experience, the most variance, so that we can build content that players can can enjoy for as long as as long as possible, or that help us understand more about ideal Phantom Galaxies gameplay, mission structures, cooperative play. There's a lot of theories we have that we're testing out, but we don't necessarily know the final answers to those theories until we can test them internally. Then we get some more confidence, and then when we release them to the player base, we then get to really see like, okay, what do the players enjoy? That's a process that takes time and iteration.
For sure, yeah, it's not an instantaneous process. All right. So will patrols become more challenging in the future? / will there be a reason not to die?
Yes to both of those. So I've talked a little bit about the future of difficulty. So currently, kind of the enemies are a fixed power level, but in the future, the same patrol that we have now, could be being run at different difficulty levels that are going to have different levels of rewards, and also, the enemies there will be a different power level, which will change and impact how much damage you deal to them and how much damage they deal to you. Additionally, some elements like the features we talked about, like control points or anything, are going to add not explicit new difficulty, but add some extra things for you to take into account when you're playing. And then certainly the player death situation is something that we've got as an area of focus for the design and dev team. So there's definitely features in the works for what death should be like for a mecha action game where the player is a heroic pilot, and we're not at the stage, unfortunately, where I can really talk about what that's going to be, but I can certainly tell you, like, we strongly agree that it is not dying frequently and reloading and coming back into an experience. Like we want to add something that's both adds difficulty to the game and makes players consider the decisions more, but also aligns with the fantasy of what the game is and who the players are in the game. That being a mecha pilot who's a hero.
I just wanted to add to that, Liam, too. I really enjoy the tanks in the levels. I think that's really cool how there's almost like a new class of a pirate fighter that we haven't encountered before, and does raise the difficulty as well, being so rugged. So I just wanted to drop that in there. That's really cool. Can we expect to see other such like classes and things?
I think we've not seen all of what the Zenora have available in their repertoire, and I think in future updates we're going to see some new things that they're cooking up. We're certainly really happy with how the experimentation with the different enemies within patrols is working out, and how it helps us to elaborate that even further. But yeah, I think you're likely to see even larger changes to what the kind of the gallery of Zenora enemies is going to be like in the future.
They're going to be bringing out the heavy artillery.
Yep, I think there's going to be some there's lots of new things being worked on. The Rangers covert operatives have are intercepting a lot of intelligence about some different things that they're manufacturing.
For sure. All right. So I suppose this is the next question is like, what enemies will come out in patrol, and will they have variation in levels? So I suppose you've realistically answered both those questions, right? Like, we're going to be seeing some more intriguing enemies at some stage, with Nora will bring in some new forces, and will they have variations in levels? Yeah, you've kind of touched on that already with the difficulties, etc. I suppose we could probably skip this one.
I mean, I guess I will just jump in and say, like, yes to all of that, as we've discussed, and I think in the in the little bit longer term, once we feel like Sonorans are in a good place where they can represent a broad set of challenges to the player, and can we can create combat encounters with a decent level of variation, then obviously the rest of the enemy factions in the game are still out there, causing trouble. So in that medium term, we will definitely see Junkers and Brooksy make appearances in patrols, and what patrols evolve into.
For sure. I'd love to see some kamikaze junkers coming at you. That'd be sick. Okay. So currently the Breach's missile is overpowered in patrols. Will you be balancing it?
Yes. So I guess there's two. To talk a little bit about game balance for a little bit. There's two aspects here that that need to be addressed. One is simply the way the combat encounters are set up in the live patrol that we have. We really wanted to test the performance of larger groups of enemies, and test out this kind of wave structure that we had going on. However, with those larger amounts of enemies in those smaller spaces, which is what we wanted to, test what was the performance issues that might crop up there. We unfortunately created situations where the Breacher really has a chance. The Breacher and his missile, particularly, has a real chance to shine, and potentially, outperform in a way that is less than ideal. I do think there is some adjustments that the Breacher missile will likely get in the future, but I wouldn't. As I said, when I was talking about it earlier, I don't see it necessarily as a Nerf hammer, like just some type of a Nerf, inflatable toy hammer that just needs to adjust it, and then we'll play it more and get some more feedback. But I think it's a combination of it being slightly overpowered, and the combat encounters that are there, a ripe opportunity to grab all of these enemies and put them in one spot. And also our level plays into that. Especially if you're slightly higher level than the enemies, you're going to deal a lot of damage pretty quick, and be able to wipe them out. So yes, I would expect some elements of the behaviour of the missile to be brought down a little bit. If I'm honest, some of the other missiles probably also need to come up a little bit to find their right spot also. But also different combat encounters aren't going to be such a ripe opportunity for the Breacher.
For sure. It'll be good to see what happens, and I appreciate hearing that we're not going to be giving it a sledgehammer approach, right? It's going to be nuanced. Okay. So how will patrols play a role in the economy of the game?
I think the way that we see it is that patrols are the starting point for the main repeatable content that we're going to be building into the game. Now, this, if you can imagine, this is a tree with a few branches on it. Building out more story type content, like the game has currently, but stuff that's explicitly designed to be played cooperatively in PvE. Very, very explicitly repeatable, short session gameplay, kind of like where patrols are now. Longer, more challenging stuff, higher difficulty stuff, and then other branches for really high, complex, teamwork required, potentially more than 4 players. The end game type content, and also lighter, shorter, less high stakes, side mission esque content. But if you imagine all of the branches on the tree and others there come down to the same, trunk, and almost the same roots and the same seeds that are roles that we have in the game currently. So that being said, the goal isn't really necessarily the loop that we have now, where patrols are driving, some amount of direct in-game rewards. Over time, we'll see that evolve into a broader economy, of which patrols is mostly focused on the gameplay that you have, and then some progress mechanics and varied rewards that come out of that into something that's a bit more complex and diverse than just kind of completing your bounties or your patrols directly for your Astrophora or Starlings. That general goal still exists to give people rewards for the content they're playing when they do it successfully, and for the time that they're spending in the game. But it's not going to be as direct and simplistic as it is in the game currently, and that's not the model that we're looking to kind of build out in its current form. This is just where we are, and we wanted to make sure we were giving people some Astrophora for engaging in patrols. But those reward schemes will get more diverse in the future.
For sure. Looking forward to seeing how it instigates the economy. It should be interesting to see. So, how will the patrols and the game lore stay in sync?
So, really, this is we're looking at this as a continuation of the game that's set up. So, obviously, currently the only real story that you get alongside the patrol is just a very little bit of a brief about there's trouble over here in this sector, go sort it out for us. And we'll continue to
Sounds like there may be some internet issues.
Sorry, am I back now? Because I think someone tried to.
You're back.
So yeah, to build on that, to create more background about what's happening in these patrols, why are we going to these sectors, what are the bad things that are happening, and how do these patrols link, not necessarily directly together, but are all dot points on a larger picture about what's happening in the current system. In this case, in the short to medium term, it's about what's going on with Zenora. They've obviously got this increased activity. We're starting to see new ship types, or we're starting to see even more ship types in the future. Some new characters are going to start to rise to prominence. What are they doing, and why? And realistically, what are we going to need to do to stop them? So, I think we see this as just a continuation of building on the lore that we have and bringing more of the lore to life in a way that the game, doesn't always do well currently. And I don't, for the people who are, the lore heads in the community, there are some really rich stories and a rich history that exist in the game. Some of that's been brought out in the Medium articles that the narrative team have written previously. And my understanding is that they were popular and well received. So there's a lot of good stuff to build on. We just need more opportunities for the game to really do some of that storytelling as well. So yeah, see that in building out with the Xenorans right now, and then with the other factions in the future.
Awesome analogy in the chat here from Animo Kaiman. So patrols are like the Mandalorian in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I guess depending on your. I mean, I think that's a great analogy. I just don't want to. The Mandalorian is both wonderful and often derided for various different issues. So I don't know that I can entirely agree, but I do think it's an apt analogy.
For sure. It's great that we can use this game mode as well to tell the story and increase the lore that's out there in regards to Phantom Galaxies. It should be really cool. And I know the narrative team are looking forward to those kind of opportunities as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So those are basically all of the patrol questions we've got for now. We'll jump into some of the more general questions. So the first more general question is, which element takes the most time to develop? For example, new enemies, the environment, or sound?
So, I mean, I think it's interesting looking at different parts of the game, be it features or content or kind of behind the scenes systems. Depending on what you look at, there's a different pie chart, right, of the time it takes to develop those things. With each of the departments in Blowfish being contributing different amounts to that. So, for take the easiest one, so for the sounds, we've got a great audio department, and they do, but they handle the vast majority of that. Also supported by people in the dev team to help hook up the great work they do. For example, the new Patrols music that happened, which I love. Is mostly obviously the sound department, and then with a little bit of support. Some things like the environment, we obviously then come into a huge number of people involved. Primarily, obviously the 3D artists making the assets, but also the 2D artists that might do some concept work or other elements in that creation. A level designer, be creating that space or editing that space. We've got various different VFX and texture artists to work on so those new crystals in the current Patrols environment is the work of the combination of people to make them looking really good, but then also relies on some Unreal 5 tech to do that work as efficiently and cost effectively as we can, while also making it look visually as good as we can too. So it's most things are a complex amalgam of multiple departments. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to answer because it's different for whatever part of the game we might look at. If it's patrols or new enemies or the level, a lot of work goes into everything that you see in the game, even if it seems relatively inconsequential.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is like everything needs a sound, everything needs a visual, everything needs AI or boundaries, etc. Dev work. It's all such a accumulation of so many people's work, and I suppose that's kind of why it isn't an instantaneous process that we can just pump out content and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so why did we switch from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5?
So I saw this question in the list, and the first caveat is, I'm not a developer. I'm sure you're going to have some of these chats with people in other departments, and I'm sure people from the dev team can give you a much clearer and also nuanced and detailed breakdown to the benefits. I can give you the highlights, but as I said, not a technical expert in this field. the two biggest things that were worth mentioning is the fidelity and the efficiency of that fidelity. So, like, every engine, as it evolves, gives you the ability to render more high quality assets. This is the history of, like, engine tech demos being built on even more amazing graphics and processing tech. The big thing for us to switch from 4 to 5 was that lots of the gains we were able to make were also gained alongside efficiencies of how we can achieve them. So things like you would need a developer and a tech artist to really dig into the specific benefits that I'm not able to do, but it allows for a whole bunch of extra fidelity, especially when it comes to big things like our mechs, which we want to be the centerpiece of the game and look great. But we also need to have a game where 4 and potentially in the future more starfighters are flying around, causing effects, casting massive super abilities, defeating dozens of enemies at the same time. And now it helps us, is one of the things that, and there's that in other areas of the game also, being an example of that. So I think that's really the big thing. It's it gives us new levels to push in fidelity, but also helps us pursue efficiency. We've got a really big big, bold, crazy idea for where this game wants to go, but we are we're not the most massive team in the world, so we need to pursue those efficiencies in any way we can, and Unreal 5 is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and Mikado-chan says because UE5 is gorgeous. I think that kind of sums it up, right? It's kind of a groundbreaking best engine that we can use right now. It does kind of it did mean that we had a bit of a setback with having to basically remake the game in the engine, but it was a really valuable and it'll pay off in the future, I think, is the moral of the story.
100%. Like, we need to be building. We want this game to go for years and years and years, and so continuing to have it built in Unreal 4 was going to cause us problems in that in the where we want to go, and also put a limit on what we could do fidelity wise. So we want to be building something that's going to look gorgeous and be built to last for a long time.
For sure. So very common question is, will we be seeing an XP bar put in the game? That came up a few times.
Yes, 100%. This is, a good opportunity. I spend most of the time talking about the things I'm excited for and the great things we're going to be adding to the game. But something like this is a good opportunity to kind of just hold our hands up and say, like, we don't always get, the priorities right all the time, and we're often looking at the new things that we want to bring to the game, and sometimes lose sight of the smaller stuff that we need to be making sure we fix or add in. So yes, certainly XP bar will be in the next update that comes out, both in the inventory and in the gameplay UI as well. Yes, so it's should have arrived sooner than it has, sooner than it will do, but it's definitely on its way. And I think we just, like I say, have to hold our hands up and say we don't necessarily get everything done in the right order that we'd want. The level cap being another example of that. Unfortunately, it should have been gradually creeping up over updates. That hasn't happened, and then we've done a big jump here for that power new level cap. I hope people are enjoying the process of working their way up through the levels, but I don't think we're likely to see as many big jumps as that in the future. We're more likely to see smaller jumps alongside new updates.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be really cool to see where we are able to get to incrementally over the period of time with the avatars and the mech levels. Should be really cool. Okay. So why is the range of a weapon so limited?
So this comes back to some of the level design and environment stuff. Now, I realise we are coming nearer to the end of our kind of time. So I would happily talk about weapon range and combat environment design for a long time. So send Barker and Glam messages if this is something that you would like to have another Starside Chat about in the future. But I'm not going to start a 20-minute tangent about it right now, given the amount of time that we have. We'll see what level of interest there is in a more detailed topic about this. But anyway, to address it briefly, we wanted to bring weapon range down from where it was previously, because we wanted to. Like I said, we want shooting to feel as good as it can do. There's a bunch of other features of which weapon range is only a very, very small part. But part of it was bringing those enemies closer in together to change the way it feels to aim at them, track them, shoot at them, and then have those shots be visibly hitting and seeing the impact of what you're doing. And conversely, the way you engage with an enemy that's shooting at you changes when those ranges are that little bit smaller. Alongside the new environment stuff that I talked about earlier on, this is an area we're still experimenting on and iterating to find, where the best version of Phantom Galaxies gameplay is. Having said that, I think in the update that went out, we were probably a little bit too harsh on the outside range of some of the player weapon types. So in the next update, there's going to be more balance changes at that top end to both extend the range a little bit further out for some of for most weapons, and also to adjust fall off damage to be less penalising than it currently is. So yeah, the goal was to bring general combat range in, and I think we ended up just being on slightly the wrong side of a little bit too short and a little bit too aggressively punishing, and you'll see that get pushed out in the next update. And then we'll have to hear more feedback and from people there to see whether we've gone far enough or whether we've gone too far in the other direction. In general, I'm very wary of balance thrashing. That can be very easy to kind of get into when we have frequent-ish updates and a lot of moving parts. So yeah, super keen to hear what people think in the future.
Yeah, it's I suppose that's the big issue with balancing, right? Is it's so difficult to get it right, especially on the first go, or even on the fourth go. It's probably one of the most complex things in game design, right? As a generalization.
I think the big thing is we want to be, delivering updates to the game in the fastest possible way that's achievable for us and us at the team. So we've kind of settled into this kind of roughly monthly cadence at the moment. Again, this is more potentially a conversation for one of our production staff than for me, but I don't see that changing, at least in the near future. Some elements we want to become more dynamic. So Patrol's already talked about, building systems that are going to allow us to change that. Other areas of the game, we'd like to be able to, and we'll obviously always address critical issues, as soon as we can when they arise. But in general, kind of that monthly cadence is around about where we're going to be. So that means there's a workflow that happens for any builds to come out. So sometimes the versions that's in the build that's going to go out the door, there've been more changes that we've got, but it's too risky and too late to put that change aboard the bus or the boat or the metaphor for something being delivered to the live game. It's just too risky, so that has to wait until the next one, unfortunately. and this would be, weapon range would be one of those things where we knew we were at the point where it wasn't exactly where we wanted, but it was an improvement, like it was a step in the right direction. That's the version that's out there live, and then and hopefully an improved version will be be put out in the next patch. Sorry, a new print will be put out in the next patch.
For sure, it should be good. So the next question is: will we see the skill tree return in some form?
Yes, we will, but not in the form that it was in the game previously. It's going to be inside the fusion system when that's completed. So you'll see more class specific improvements available to you. So if you're if you're an assault pilot, your skill tree and the upgrades available to you are going to be different. There may be some overlap, some more general things, but one of the things with Fusion is to build out a progression skill system that more things are specific to the type of class that you are, and we can push that gameplay variation so that they all feel a bit more distinct. Right? So your assault feels more different to your Buster or Lancer.
Sure. Okay. Will we be seeing more land fights / bosses?
I'm assuming from the question that those things are like connected to each other rather than separate. So because I can say definitely yes to some form of bosses in the future, but in the near term they're more likely to be space space combat bosses that you're going to encounter. We do want to get more ground-based content into the game, but at the moment our focus is on building out patrols, and for now those patrols are mostly space environments that you're going to be flying around and shooting and doing cool stuff in.
For sure. I think, patrols are very much our priority, and we just need to, get that to the right space before we start looking into the different types of content. But I do like the idea of more space bosses and bosses in the patrols. I think that would be really cool. All right. So this is the final question that we have prepared, and you know what? We've timed it basically perfectly. So I think that we'll end after this one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Final question: how will botting be monitored / banned?
Yeah, so this is one of those. I spend a lot of my time answering questions in a vague way because I want to be mindful of how we set expectations to the community, and then giving the developers, designers, everybody else, the right amount of time to make features good and complete before saying like they will definitely be out at a certain date. Other than things like I know are almost there. When it comes to botting and exploit protection and all of those different things, we end up answering in a vague way, myself or people from the tech department or Ben, because we don't want any extra information to be out there. The two things that are worth talking about are one, we know some of the implementation of different reward systems and use or requirement of NFTs does leave some potential room, the idea that there is room from a player's point of view for exploits. Having said that, on the back end, we have an awful lot of control about how we give out things like Astropher, how we track the amount players are gaining, at what rate, track their speed through progression systems like the Ranger track or through XP levels. Some of those constraints are visible to the player. So things like the global Astropher cap and the daily cap on patrol rewards are visible limitations that we show to the player to say, like, this is the connected economy that we're all playing into. It has limits and controls, and it has a handbrake. You can know that, and know what the current thing is, and those features will get embellished and give players more insight into what's happening there, the current state of things on a given day or week, or partway through a season. But behind that, there's a whole load of invisible tracking that we have that helps us give an extra layer of security around that. But it's not something that we're ever going to talk openly about. We want to give players that visibility for a certain amount of that, but the rest of it is for the tech and web dev teams to have their tools and their processes that find out when they're actually. Because I don't want to paint a picture that there's nothing happening, but we've got a lot of tools to be able to track that and close loopholes, or create solutions to make sure that it's not an exploit that can be something that will be damaging to the game or the community.
And we definitely don't want to be giving too much information so that the exploiters can then go and try to find workarounds for that as well. I think that's another important thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to keep our cards close to our chest.
For sure. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Liam, thank you in particular for joining us. We really appreciate you joining us while on holiday in America. That's nuts. I'm sure you have jet lag to hell. So we appreciate it.
Some medicinal caffeine has been used.
Good.
Thanks so much, Liam. Thanks. You're a complete rock star. And everyone in the community, please, in the chat, let's hear it for Liam.
Yeah, send some love.
For joining us, for being so candid and open, but also on his family holiday, joining in. That's incredible. And Liam, we can expect to see you regularly at Starside Chats. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm certainly keen to talk about about the game a lot with the community. I said, please pester people to say that you want to hear about weapon range, because I'm quite happy to, but also other things, right? Like if people want to know more about abilities, or class design, or more stuff about patrols or whatever, do give that feedback to Glam and Barker or anyone else, because the menu for what we want to talk about does have some flexibility, and I'm happy to tackle what the community are interested in hearing about when it comes to games design or narrative design specifically.
For sure. And we're also planning on getting more people from the heads of different teams to come in and join us as well, so that they can give their insight and their input into what's happening behind the scenes. I know that for a lot of our community members, it's been a long time coming, having more visibility with the team. But I assure you, it's not because we've been hiding. It's just because we've had so much happening, and now we're trying to focus back on the community and give some love and get some more feedback. So yeah, we really appreciate you all. Awesome. Well, thank you all, and we will see you at the next Starside Chat. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.